Hey, what's up, guys? It's Sanden Senpai. Kind of just wanted to talk about software engineering burnout and why it's probably worse than you think and what's actually happening. So I've been a software engineer for a while now, and I've been coding for probably over 10 years now. I've worked in multiple big companies, medium, and a smaller company, currently in the United States. Um, so software engineering burnout really is something that I had to deal with a lot last year and somewhat a little bit early this year. And it hits in multiple different factors. What burnout can actually kind of look like. It's not just being tired physically, or anything like that, but it can kind of come in like the apathy that you have towards your work that, at one point you probably enjoyed because you got into it. You went to school for whatever, how many years, 4 to 6 years that most software engineers kind of go to school, get your schooling done, and you go through all the hard processes of doing that. Definitely in today's like society, you kind of go through tons and tons of rejection at all levels, even when you get 5 plus years. um as technology is changing, it just causes a lot of burnout from just trying to get a job, um to just maintaining your job. There's just burnout everywhere, it seems like. um but just to mostly speak on when you have a job, that burnout can come from, looking at like your backlog is just never ending. Like no matter what you do, you'll always have, it seems like 100 plus tickets that you have to always go across, rather it be new things being introduced or, just maintaining things that people wrote 10 years ago that are just horrible to deal with. And, learning those processes, every time you go from a job to job is just, it's a ton of effort. And when you become an expert on it, quote unquote, just working in it once or twice, that those tickets usually always get assigned to you. So if you work in that application once or twice, you're kind of like the master of the domain. So those endless tickets, of always changing expectations, and it's just never done. Um, the constant context switching, I guess. So doing like meetings, stand up every morning, tickets and bugs. That constant context switching is kind of like where burnout has been hitting me a lot lately, on a day-to-day basis. Just going in, doing a really deep technical dive, and then hopping in a meeting with like non-technical people and trying to turn that technical portion of your brain off to where they understand what you're saying sometimes, or even just contributing to the conversation at all and not having your head still stuck in that space that you left behind, and then going right back to that new ticket or old ticket, you know. And a lot of the times, a lot of jobs will pile multiple user stories on, so you'll be working on something and then, you have to go work in another application. So that big switch, can really cause a lot of burnout over the time. Definitely like when you start jumping frameworks and stuff like that. um, so something that I really dealt with last year, not to say the company's name or anything, was just really bad leadership. This is the one time that I ever have been, since I've been working, I'm sorry, that I just really had to quit my job. Like I had a job lined up afterwards, but man, I had to sit here and struggle through this job, and I was burnt out almost like from a month of being at this company. Because my first 5 months at this company, I wasn't gaining any PTO or any time off. It had minimal holidays, so like the break, there was no real break. So even like, I just moved to a new state and I got really bad allergies. So like I got super sick and I had no time to get off. So I kind of had to just push through that sickness, even though, my head is just dizzy or whatever. I'm still trying to develop new products and stuff. But this manager, he never really took the hint to like be like, yo, you should probably go home and rest or anything like that. So like that bad policy from that company, plus that manager never taking the hint and constantly loading up that endless backlog of like tickets onto a new developer, pushed me out within 7 months of that company. But right around month 4, I was like, I can't last here. Let me go find a new job, basically, and just in tandem, going home and applying for software engineering jobs, doing all these interview processes, and working the software engineering job and trying to keep it before any major bad things happen to me. There's no good balance at that time. In addition to that poor leadership that can kind of become like an on-call stress, that also kind of leads to a major thing. Like, say if you release a product or a feature or a bug fix, say something doesn't happen, like you're kind of on the hook. Like if something's going wrong, definitely on a smaller team or smaller company, more responsibilities kind of fall on you as a software engineer or software developer. Um, a lot of business people try to push a lot of small things onto you, even though it's not really in our criteria of job per se, but you start wearing a lot of hats. Definitely the more senior you get at a company, you start wearing tons of hats, and junior people coming to you for help, which is always fine. But like, it starts becoming very stressful because, if their product, if a junior's product goes wrong, it's not really under you, but like, they might need help to where they hit you up after work or something like that. And I think the biggest thing with dealing with tech is this feeling of always being behind, no matter what. So you kind of almost have, like, the longer I've gone in my engineering career, is you almost have to tune out what everybody's saying. It really will cause you a lot of burnout as far as what technology stack or what tech you have to learn, or what AI is going to do to your job, or what AI is doing. A lot of that is kind of just smoke. Um, it's not true. At least as far as mine is that'll cause a lot of burnout because you're always going to feel behind. Like, oh, I need to master all these programming languages. Well, yes and no. I would say that it's more so on who you're working for at that time that you should be really worrying about. But the best thing that I can suggest is to stay away from this tech burnout and learning process, is that you should specialize in one language and a framework. So for me, I'm heavily in C sharp and .NET, framework and core, and like newer stuff like .NET 8.0. But a lot of the Microsoft tech stack is where I found my success as far as a software engineer and landing jobs. So that's kind of what I specialized in. But in addition, there's been a big, push into AI and learning, how to work with these tools and how to implement them. So, I've been dabbling in Python, and as my job pushes onto it, but I used to, when I was more of a junior developer, I always felt overwhelmed. I'd be learning Java and Python and C sharp and C++ plus plus and all these languages and all these frameworks. And I never become really a master of any of it, because I used to watch all these YouTube channels and stuff and listen to the news telling me, hey, you need to learn this new front end. Like, React at the time was like the huge one, even though I was pretty comfortable with Angular at the time. Now it's Vue and this, and there's all these millions of frameworks coming out. It seems like a year, and all these new AI tools and everything. That creep of technology can really start causing you some burnouts. So the best thing that I can say is you have to tune it out. Um, but basically, those things all can kind of accumulate into signs of you burning out. I think as a developer, you really have to start focusing on, so you can actually maintain a consistent career path, or if it's just something that you do as a hobby, that you're trying to make your living off of, or pushing through that gauntlet of applying for jobs, even as a senior developer. But mostly a lot of the entry level people, this is for you, is you kind of have to just put it down sometimes. You have to turn it off. You have to stop, like, these signs, like you'll start noticing sometimes you stop caring about simple things like code quality. Um, and you're just going to start pushing these things off, like basic things that you would do, like avoid To go kind of back, you're going to start avoid learning new things, and that's kind of those burnouts that I started seeing in myself. It's almost a contradiction of what I said of, you know, tuning out everything, but you still kind of have to focus on it and force it almost at times. But when you when you see these signs of burnout, you really have to step aside and step back a little bit and kind of just hone your set that you have. You know what I mean? Say you're a Java developer, work on Spring, become a master at that, and just be familiar with certain things because that kind of will keep you consistent through rough times. Um, but basically, what doesn't even really fix these burnouts is, when people just tell you to take a weekend off. Sometimes it'll take 6 months. Um, learning new things can contribute to that burnout that you're always feeling like I said, you're feeling behind on these technologies, or just push through it. You know what I mean? Sometimes I've heard that, like I've gone to a mentor before and he's like, hey man, sometimes you just got to push through it. And it's like, all right, well, I've been dealing with this burnout for a year. um, you know don't Sometimes that's not the way to go about things. But what actually kind of can help is setting boundary, like when you're an actual developer, like actual working as a software engineer, setting your boundaries. You know what I mean? 5 o'clock, it's off. Turning it off. Turn your notifications to Teams off or whatever you guys are using, and just turn it off most of the week, right? Um, I hate saying it, but like I said, when I was really feeling a lot of burnout at that last company that I was talking about that I only lasted 7 months at. I just had to switch companies. It's not what you want to do, it's a drastic measure, but man, I felt like I was going to get fired at a point, and you know, I don't know if I know some of it was me, but also I feel like some of it was them, but like they weren't helping me get past my burnout, of applying for jobs and looking for jobs and picking up, that 6 month period where I wasn't gaining any PTO or getting a lot of time off or anything like that. Like there was no, you know, tug given in. Like I couldn't really do anything. So I just had to leave the company into another company, which, could take a year at some points of your career, which is a lot. Um, and taking real time off, really, like I said, sometimes you just have to put it aside. Even just code, I mean, unless you're doing it for a living, if you're doing it from a hobby or you're, really take some time off. Like if you're in college still, take those 2 weeks off or 3 weeks off in between your times. Don't be cramming all this stuff in all the time. Don't be jamming leak code all the time. Sometimes you just need to take a break and let your brain heal. Yeah, you'll probably forget some things, but it's like riding a bike. You'll be able to pick it up right back where you left off. Like you'll be like, oh, these data structures, I remember this, and but you're gonna be a little bit more rejuvenated. You definitely have to take some time. Sometimes it's a very long time. Um, there was one point where I pretty much had to take, 3 month hiatus from anything technology, anything, any social media, anything, because I was just so burnt out on dealing with technology that I delved so deep in it. But yeah, so you kind of have to step back from it. And I think, reducing your cognitive load, and what I mean is, um, how much your mental work you do outside of development or your work. So if you're an actual software engineer doing this as a professional, reducing that cognitive load of stress, like, you doing hard mental critical thinking work outside of work. Um, and just kind of blanking out, man, just relaxing, go for a walk, go fishing, go have some drinks with your friends. Those things really do help out. Go enjoy your time being present for your family, hanging out with your kids or hanging out with your significant other, or just doing other things away from technology. And I mean, put the phone down, put the computer down. Stop playing video games. Like really, go lift some weights, go for a walk, go for a run, go push yourself physically to where your thinking is lessened. Um, those kind of actually has helped me out when I was really, really burnt out. I would go do those things outside of work, shut off 5 o'clock, put it down, and then go step away from technology. The only technology I was really even using was a TV. You know what I mean? I would watch whatever at the time. And kind of, but like watching TV is not a very cognitive thing. Um, but basically, kind of moving out just a little bit. Um, the bigger truth about like tech careers is, you know, the burnout can kind of come from like different angles, but like the truth is you really don't have to love coding 24/7. This job and this hobby gets shoved down your throat as such a competitive thing. As far just from the beginning, you have to learn all these frameworks. You have to learn it super fast. You have to be competitive about it. Hackathons, like that's just turned into a competitive thing. Even career interviewing processes are competitive as far as you need to know data structure and algorithms and what time complexities are and all these frameworks that this company needs to have you do. Like you almost get it's almost like a clown and circus show. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. And I would love to see the software engineering field turn to a better processes of where things aren't so competitive. You don't have to love coding all the time. You're not going to after you've done it for 5 years. In fact, the more you start developing and your career progresses, you hate what you do sometimes. Like sometimes it's a job, right? Like sometimes you just hate coding. Like I haven't coded on my own time in probably like 2 or 3 years. I haven't done anything new in the past 2 or 3 years, but I've developed new skill sets that my jobs have required me to do. I looked into them a little bit, but I've never actually physically wrote code. I try to stay away from that because I'm doing it for 5 hours a day, 6 hours a day, working with AI and these things, right? So yeah, that's one thing is you don't really have to love coding all the time. And a job can just be a job. That's a big point that I always try to tell newer people. So just kind of reeling it back even more is, you have to think of life as a marathon, just as you have to think of your career as a marathon. The longevity will always beat that short-term grind. There's tons of people that were way better than me all the time from the very beginning that I've started coding around the same time, but that don't even develop anymore. So just remember, longevity is something that you have to take care of yourself, take care of your mental to deal with these burnouts. Set boundaries for yourself. If you're applying for jobs, whatever, 5 jobs a day, right? 5 jobs a day. And you're going to beat out that person that applied for 100 jobs a day because you're going to be consistently doing 5 jobs a day and you actually have specific interest in those 5 jobs that you put a little bit of time into and research. But, um, you know, just to kind of end this, just speaking from a software engineer's point, I guess I'm a mid-level, senior level. These are the things about burnout that I've really dealt with, and I just kind of wanted to talk about it a little bit because it doesn't seem like a lot of people do. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video, but I'm gonna make more videos about real life in tech and just kind of talk about certain things. I just really felt like I should have talked about that. So um, yeah, enjoy.